Hello, I wanted to give you a quick update on what's going on with my MTO to Salesforce project. I was supposed to give it up and start doing this other project, which I still need to do, but I went on vacation for a week to San Diego and I came back and I found myself interested in continuing to improve this project before I finally give it up. I need to wait about 6 months before I can know if it's even going to be feasible to pay for the thing or not. But I still wanted to kind of reach a more developed point in this project to show what I can do and whether or not it's feasible. So if you watch the last video, you'll know that I was having a little bit of an issue or a little bit of regret about how I used the name field for the providers being like the doctors and such. And you had this sort of auto number here that was showing up. My initial um, solution to that issue was to create a formula field, which would just sort of combine the last name, first name, and the credential of the doctor into a different field, and then make that field a hyperlink so that I would still do the same thing where you could click on it and it would go to the doctor's lightning page. So that worked a little bit, and I was able then, with that formula field, I was able to change some things in the um, search layouts. So I got into the search layouts because it was something that was also causing some problems on the phone app. And here in like a list view, obviously you can just go to select fields to display and you can kind of mess around with stuff and it's fairly easy. It works pretty well. But that's not necessarily going to change anything on the phone app. You have to really get into the guts to get the phone app to work right. And what was happening is you would see in the recent items or recent activity and that sort of thing, you would see the auto number. And then I got it, first thing I did is I got it to show also the name or the last name or that sort of thing. I got it to where it is showing useful information in every instance, not just the provider, but the appointments and the reminders and the exams and everything, using the search layouts. Search layouts turned out to be kind of my friend. But when it came time to search for the doctors, it was still showing the auto number and it still wanted to use it. So, for instance, now if I go to provider, I want to create a new appointment. I go to the provider. You'll see here in recent items, I have the full name of the doctor and then their specialty. That's much more useful, right? And I can search on it. It's going to bring up the one I want. And it will have in that record that you're looking at the full name of the doctor instead of the auto number, because at this point you found the right provider, but what you're left here on the screen as a visual clue is just this number that is meaningless to my users. So I didn't like it. I found it very, very clunky. So what I did, I had to basically, as much success as I had with the formula field, and there are some limitations, is what I found out to the formula field. There are certain places in search layouts where the formula field isn't going to show up right. And so it won't even give you an error. It just won't show up. So that was a little bit confusing. But I got past it. And anyway, what I found out I had to do was I just turned the auto number name field to a text field and I updated the values. Instead of having a formula, which, of course runs as needed, I just created new values. And how I did that, which is a little bit of a journey as well, I I created the string and I found out, I mean the select statement, excuse me, and I found out that the SOQL is not particularly good about concatenating in the sense that it doesn't do it. And there's also not some I'm very spoiled by using T-SQL and SQL Server because there's lots of extremely useful built-in functions like is null. Well, there isn't any is null in the SOQL, but there is all of this functionality in Apex. So in order to do that, I had to go to here to test. No, excuse me. I go to debug. I open and execute anonymous window, and this is what I have right here. This was the code that I wrote. And what it does is it went through, it got the ID, which of course is the key. That's the Salesforce ID, which I have learned is the ID that you really want to use in all your master detail relationships. And that gives you the ability to kind of mess around with that name field. And I create, well, first I call it all the different values here in just in a regular SOQL statement. And then for each value, I get into some Apex code and I declare 3 strings. I get the different values and what's going on here. This is kind of interesting. This is basically these 2 question marks and then this empty string after that. That is the equivalent of the is null. So in each one of these cases, if it doesn't find anything in this value, it's going to give you this blank string. And I had to do this because some of the providers, most of the providers have a first name, last name, and a credential. Some don't have credentials. Some are really not providers as such. They're really just places, like say Alexandria Mental Health Center. That would just be one value. So the first name is empty and the credential is empty, but it still counts as a provider. So I'm checking for those null values and then I'm sticking them all together and I'm updating the name here in the table, the name field in the table, to those 3 variables with some spaces in between. And that's how I did that, and it worked like a charm. So now I have this wonderfully sort of useful looking provider name here. And I also, after having done that, of course, the next question is, well, what if you need to create a new provider, which providers come and go. So that clients, you don't have to worry too much about creating a new client, but with doctors and medical providers, you do. So I created a flow. There is it. There it is. I'm going to widen this a little bit. And how this flow works is, let's say, create a new provider record. I created a screen flow. And you would be entering the last name. Yeah, I make you enter the last name because that's usually the one. Even if there's just one value, it's going to be in the last name. And the first name and the credential and the specialty, phone number, email address, and some other things. I actually got into address fields, which is another thing I'll talk about later. And notice that that name field actually isn't on the form. And that's because what I did, when I go over here to the create records part of the flow, I created a record variable and I'm filling the record variable with all this stuff. But when it comes time to create the provider name, I'm just concatenating other values from the screen here. And it was really pretty funny. This is the first time I had done something like that. And I used all this sort of concatenating language that I'm used to using, like ampersand and quote and space and quote. And the first record I made had all the ampersands and the quotes in it. And I was like, hey, what? So that was pretty funny. Turns out all you need to do here when you create this value that is a concatenated value is you just need to type a space. That's all you got to do. And I was like, oh, okay. That seemed very counterintuitive. It's sort of, you're looking at something like this one moment. This is basically a combination of SQL and something that looks very much like Java, Apex code. And if you don't type things exactly so, they're going to fail. To this, which is extremely easy, kind of really not a big deal at all. So I create this flow, and then what I did is I assigned it to a button, and I stuck that button on the list view. So over here, you can see where it says, instead of saying new, I got rid of the new button, which kind of comes with, and I got this new provider button. So if I click this, it'll sit there and churn away for a while, but then eventually it will come up. And this is the form that I created. And you fill this out and you hit save or next. I'm going to have to see about changing that to save or finish. I think I had it saying finished. But there is actually a little form that says, thanks, you did it. So maybe that's why I went to next. And it will create the record for you. Another thing that I did, having done that I also wanted to do separate, was this thing having to do with address. This is actually the address Salesforce data type, which I found through a trainer that I was doing some training with. I didn't know that this existed. She said that you had to go in there and turn it on. So I went in there and turned it on. There's lots of things you have to turn on. I had to turn on the ability to use dynamic related lists, for instance, and have them show up in my phone app. But so I'm turning lots of stuff on. I turned on the address data type, and these are the actual data types that I found that it needed me to fill in. But the funny thing is that when I went to update the existing records, not all of these fields seem to be there. But anyway, it's pretty cool how the address data type works out, because I'll close this. And let's say I'm going to bring up somebody. I want to find a phony doctor that I created, Mr. Bob Smith. He is a doctor of guitar with a Real Madrid credential. And if you go down, instead of having, I used to have like here, street and city, state, zip. I'm going to get rid of those. But instead, I'm filling this down here. So if you click on this, and this also works in the phone app, which is what's really, really cool. Click on this. It opens it up in Google Maps. This is actually not his address. This is my old apartment in New York City, but which I love to look at sometimes. But that in the phone app I thought was really, really cool. So that is some new stuff that I am doing, adding buttons, using Apex code. I love this address functionality, getting more into flows, and getting rid of some of the clunkiness. For instance, I'm going to go back in and here, all this stuff, this is all sort of standard object stuff, new contact, new opportunity, new case. All this stuff's got to go. So I might spend a little bit more time doing stuff like that. And I may even make some new lightning pages. This is obviously the one that just came with. And then really tighten this thing up. And I might even add some more functionality up here, like have the different group homes have their own lightning pages with the related lists, dynamic related lists that for that house. But after that, I don't know. And after that, I need to quit doing this stuff, even though I'm really having a lot of fun with it, and wait for it to figure out if we're even going to be able to pay for all this stuff. But if you're still watching, thanks.